Frida Baby is under fire for seemingly sexualizing kids in their product packaging. Also, chips are continuing to fall post-Epstein files release. We've got more people resigning over their involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. We've got more cases of tragic trans violence. There is a commonality in all of these stories today that we will be exploring. We've got all of this and much more on today's episode of Relatable. Hey guys, welcome to Relatable. Happy Monday. Hope everyone had a wonderful, peaceful, restful weekend. Well, this just in. This is literally breaking news. You're hearing it here first. God's eternal plan of redemption is going off without a hitch. Praise God. I'm so glad that is still true today, every second of every day, that nothing is surprising to him. He's not looking down, taken aback. He's never shocked. He's never thrown off. He's never surprised because nothing happens arbitrarily or accidentally. There are no maverick molecules in all of creation, not in your life, not in the entirety of history, and not in the entirety of the universe. We have a God who is sovereign over all of it, and he is actively working all things together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. That's what we read in Romans 8:28. And what good news that is when even our circumstances seem murky, or maybe they seem downright tragic, and we don't know how we are ever going to get pulled out of this pit of anxiety or the paralysis of depression, that heavy burden, whatever it is you're carrying or someone in your life is carrying. I don't know when that's going to end. I'm not here to give you a health and wealth gospel that says you're about to turn a corner. I just feel like something's about to shift for you. I don't know that. I haven't been given that insider knowledge. All I have is the promise that is in God's word, that one day he's coming back, that one day we're going to be set free from everything that binds us, that one day we're not going to be tempted to sin anymore. One day there's not going to be the effect of sin. So there's not going to be any sorrow. There won't be any betrayal. There won't be any war. There won't be violence. There won't be division. There won't be politics. There won't be cowardice. There won't be a need for courage or sacrifice. We will live in perfect peace forever and ever. There will be no more little kids getting sick. There will be no more victims. There will be no more of these chaotic news stories that we have to talk about and try to make sense of. Everything will be light. Everything will be goodness. And if you ever look at the state of the world or even the state of your own life and you're thinking, gosh, how do I see God in this? Like, how would a good God, who I'm told is a good father, why would he let any of this happen? The thing that I take comfort in, because I have those thoughts too, we all have those thoughts, especially as parents. We look at our kids, I'm like, if I had the power to stop that bad thing from happening in my kid's life, I would. God has the power to stop this bad thing happening in the world, yet he doesn't. So how do I square that with the reality that God is love and that he is just and good? Well, I square that by remembering that his eternal plan of redemption is ongoing. It is happening. It never hits a bump in the road, that he is promising that he is going to come back and that he's not just going to gloss over injustice, but he's actually going to avenge his people. He is actually going to pay back the evildoers, and he's going to defeat Satan and defeat the wicked, and his wrath is kindling. He's planning all of that. He knows, and he alone knows the day and the hour when Jesus is going to come back, not as a humble baby in a manger, but as a warrior with a sword coming out of his mouth, riding on a horse with a tattoo on his thigh. A very different picture of our Messiah when he comes back. That's what we have hope in, and that's what we can take joy in, even when things are really hard. And that is why you've heard me say this a lot, that Christians must have this winning combination of clarity and courage. We live in an age of chaos and confusion and cowardice. You've even got Christians who will feed you confusion and they'll call it just nuance, or they will feed you a message of cowardice. They will encourage you to be cowardly, to be quiet, and they'll call that peacemaking. Well, Jesus came to not bring peace primarily, but a sword. And remember, the truth divides. The truth divides. As Christians, we're not purposely trying to be divisive, but the gospel is divisive. The reality of right and wrong, sin and goodness, those messages are divisive. So I just want to encourage you, when you are feeling all the pressure of the world, to swim downstream and to go along to get along. What Christ has called us to, especially in this moment, is clarity and courage. I don't always know what that looks like for you and your life. It doesn't necessarily always mean this big public display of bravery, although it might. You simply have to do, I simply have to do the next right thing in faith with excellence and for the glory of God. Sometimes that's changing a diaper. Sometimes that's sending an email. Sometimes it's something more public and a little bit bigger than that. Sometimes it's standing up to your PTA, the administration at your school, your city council, your boss, people in authority, and saying that is wrong. That was sin. That was cowardice. And maybe you're the only voice to do it, but let me tell you, I know from experience that courage is contagious. And if we have courageous pastors and courageous moms and courageous dads willing to actually be a light by speaking the hard truth in love in every sphere that you occupy, that is how Christians change culture. That's how we've changed culture for 2,000 years. So as we talk about, yet again, darkness that is happening in this world and how Satan is weaving himself through all of this and disguising himself as an angel of light. And as we see yet again that children are the unconsenting subjects of these progressive social experiments, that children have a target on their back, not only by the powers that be, but also Satan himself, and has since the beginning. We also have to remember that Christians have been carrying this baton for 2,000 years of protecting the most vulnerable by doing and saying the difficult, the unpopular thing, but the true thing, whatever the cost. Before we get into some of those stories, I just want to take a little bit of an administrative break and remind you about Share the Arrows. If you want to be equipped with courage, if you want to be equipped with clarity, that is what Share the Arrows is. That was my inspiration for starting it. If you don't know what I mean by sharing the arrows, this is a theme that we've had on the show for several years. When a Christian is getting canceled, condemned, criticized, lambasted for their faith. Maybe people are trying to put them out of business. Maybe people are trying to push them out into the darkness, out into the margins of society. Maybe they're getting bullied. They're getting unfairly punished in some way for standing for what is good, right, and true. Rather than us as Christians, rather than us saying, oh, I'm so glad that's not me. I'm so glad that I'm not getting bullied. I'm just going to kind of hide over here in my corner until the mob runs by and maybe they won't notice me. No. Instead of being cowards who are ashamed of Christ and ashamed of the gospel, we stand up and say, hey, actually, I'm over here too. And whatever arrows you're throwing her way, you can throw my way too, because guess what? What she said, I also believe it. I believe that too. Yeah, it's unpopular to say that marriage is between a man and a woman. Yeah, I know people are going to get really angry if I talk about the value of embryos and the ethical problems with something like IVF. People are going to get angry when I say that abortion is murder. People are going to get mad when I say there's only two genders. People are going to be outraged when I say that Jesus is the only way to heaven. But if you're going to be mad at things that are biblically true, send your anger my way and I'll share those arrows with her. So this conference is about equipping you to be a bold Christian in every sphere that you occupy, stay-at-home mom, or if you're an employee, if you're a boss, if you are a single woman, married woman, grandmother, and to be an effective witness. And all of our speakers are biblically solid. They are gospel-centered. This is a worship-filled conference, and this is, above all, a no-fluff conference. Unlike most women's conferences, this is not about self-love and our emotions and making us feel better and just telling people that we're beautiful. That's not what this is about. This is about theology. This is about apologetics. This is about bringing the word of God with you wherever you go and being encouraged and equipped to do that. It's really an incredible Holy Spirit-filled day. This is year 3, October 10th, Dallas, Texas. Go to sharethearrows.com. Make sure that you bring your friends, your small group. It's just a women's conference, no men allowed, except for, just a spoiler, there will be some male presence on the stage this year. That's all I'll say. But in attendance, it is a Christian women's conference. I can't wait to see you there. Sharethearrows.com. If you love this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you watch or listen. It really helps the show a lot. It helps other people see the show. So if you think this is truth that needs to be shared, please leave us a positive review and make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Maybe you're watching this, you think you subscribe, but make sure that you subscribe and like this video if you like this video. All right, let's get into some of the craziness of the day. Let me go ahead and pause. I'll tell you about our first sponsor. It's Adele Natural Cosmetics. One of the best ways that we can support Christians is making sure that we are supporting their companies rather than just funding the alternatives. So many times, secular companies, especially these big wealthy companies, they donate a portion of your dollars to Planned Parenthood, to Democrat politicians, to pro-trans causes. And if you want to make sure that your dollars are going toward a company that supports our values, unapologetically pro-life, unabashedly Christian, then you need to get your cosmetics and your skincare from Adele Natural Cosmetics. Love them so much. Arlene and her family are the real deal. This is a family-owned company. They hand make all of their products here in America. Everything is completely natural. No synthetic fragrances, no synthetic fake endocrine disrupting ingredients that you have to worry about. I use their oil-based essential cleanser every day. As far as their makeup, their moisturizing foundation is incredible. They'll also give you a complimentary color matching service. You're not guessing the shades and you can get the one that looks best on you. I love Adele and you will too. Go to AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com. Use code Allie for 25% off your first time purchase. AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, code Allie. All right. Unfortunately, it has been about 0 days since we have had to talk about yet another tragedy where people have lost their lives. They have been murdered because of a man who believes that he is a woman, being enraged at his wife, being enraged at children, and reportedly taking out this anger on them through murder. So there is a transgender Rhode Island shooter who walked into a hockey game and allegedly shot his wife, his ex-wife, and his son, killed them, injured at least 3 others before turning the gun on himself and ending his own life. So let me give you just a little bit of information and then we'll analyze why this is happening over and over again. So police described the shooting as a targeted incident that was stemming from a family dispute. Of course, police are almost always very politically correct in these situations. According to one of his adult daughters, Amanda Wallace Hubbard, he battled serious personal demons, exhibited toxic behavior throughout his adult life. We'll put up some pictures of what he looked like as well. Court documents reveal longstanding family conflicts tied to the suspect's so-called gender transition. The reason we say so-called is because it's not actually possible to transition your gender or your sex. He had mental health issues. This includes the suspect's wife's divorce filing that originally cited, quote, gender reassignment surgery, narcissistic and personality disorder traits as a reason for the split. Before that language was actually crossed out. So it ended up being crossed out of court documents and later amended to irreconcilable differences. But obviously we know the truth based on these court documents. This poor woman was married to this man. He fathered her kids. I believe I read that they have 6 children together, grown children at this point, and that he decided that he wanted to transition, so-called, into a woman. We don't know all the details of that and exactly how that went down, but I can just imagine. We've heard the testimony of other women in a similar situation, how heartbreaking that is. Even you hear from Kris Kardashian, and this was on reality TV when she was just begging Bruce, like, please take a trinket or something from all of our life together. You don't want any of your possessions. She's like smelling his shirts because she misses her husband. I mean, it's like someone died. And when you have someone who is so narcissistic and has fed into this extremely dark fetish, because that's what it is, a man enjoying having breasts and wearing women's clothing, that's a fetish, okay? That's a sexual perversion. It has nothing to do with gender dysphoria. That is, I think, a form of devastation that is almost worse than death, because if you lost your husband, at least you know you lost your husband. Like, he died as your husband, this man who loved you. And of course that's tragic, but this is like someone died and it is forcing you to lie. It's forcing you to pretend something that you don't want to pretend. And there's also, I can't even imagine the psychological trauma that goes along with that. Like this person that you conceive children with is now has like fake breasts and looks so grotesque. I just can't imagine how difficult that was. If we look at this person's who went by the name of Roberta, surprise, surprise, his name was Robert previously, we see a lot of confusion and just a lot of strange things. So here are some of those posts. My cis wife has flames shooting from her ears when I outdo her. And I just want to note, this is something that is extremely common among these men who have this sexual gender fetish, is that there is an envy towards women in their life. They actually try to mimic the clothing, the style, the look of their wives. There's a lot of gender envy, covetousness going on there. And again, in the vast majority of cases, I believe this comes from an addiction to porn that gets darker and darker. There is a whole genre of porn. We've talked about it with a researcher on this show that really promotes this kind of behavior and this kind of living out fetish. And let me just tell you, humiliation of actual women and girls is a part of that fetish. Okay, that's not just like an unfortunate consequence of this that people like him wanted to avoid. No, that was something that he got off on. That was something that he was excited about. So just understand that when I hear people with this kind of like faux compassion for transgenderism, that, oh, well, we just need to accept this. I can't imagine what it's like to feel like you're born in the wrong body. That constitutes probably less than 1% of men or boys who try to identify as the opposite sex. I mean, the DSM-5 said it was somewhere like 1% of males actually struggled with that persistent feeling from a young age that they were really supposed to be a girl. We should have compassion for that. They can't control that. But still, the answer to that even is not to affirm that that boy is actually a girl. That is still cruel. What's even more cruel is affirming someone who through pornography has been convinced that they are actually a woman and saying, yeah, this dude, you see the pictures, you saw the pictures of this person, should be able to share a bathroom with a little girl. Obviously not. Now, as you could tell from the images, this person also on testosterone, in addition to the synthetic estrogen. In fact, he says, all my roid rages came from testosterone, not my estrogen, oddly enough. There's no way actually for you to know that. I mean, men aren't supposed to be pumped with estrogen. There's a reason why we have this certain amount of hormones that we have. Women are supposed to have a certain amount of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. Men are supposed to have their levels of testosterone and hormones that are right for their body. God made them that way. That starts in the womb, by the way. Of course, when we mess that up, that's going to have psychological and physical negative effects. And then Roberta says, anyway, when I'm misgendered, I politely whisper through clenched teeth, honey, don't make me break a nail knocking your teeth out. Yeah, because that's how women talk. That's how women talk. Me and the gals, like whenever someone comes up to us and says something we don't like, we're like, man, I'm going to break a nail knocking your teeth out. Yeah, sure. That's super feminine. Also, Roberta says, I could build a wall with the skulls of everyone who calls me sir. And again, like this is so incredibly common, this kind of talking. Like, do you remember, was it the lieutenant governor of Michigan? No, I think it was Minnesota. And we can pull that up. And remember, she had this picture where she was opening up her blazer and her t-shirt said, protect trans kids. And it had a knife on there. So that's, if you don't affirm that Jack has just become Sally at 12 years old, we will kill you. Okay? We see this kind of violent rhetoric a lot from these transgender activists. This also, Roberta, weird, says, I'm hyper-conservative, hyper-Christian, and hyper-gender dysphoric trans woman. Anyone can take a particular sentence from the Bible and condemn another to death justifiably. Okay, no, you're not a Christian. Jesus says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Now, none of us is perfect. That's absolutely true. All of us can struggle with a variety of things and sin in a variety of different ways. and still be Christians because we won't be perfect until glory. But this unrepentant sin that ended up leading to murder, that shows an unregenerate heart. And a struggle doesn't mean that you do something that you want to do. Like a struggle would mean that you are not doing that thing, even though it's difficult. Roberta said, my wife says she hates the person who stole her husband. And she said, he said, I think it's extremely important to take special care of those who stand by us, listen and understand what they're going through for our sake. Okay, weirdo. So all different kinds of things, pro-trans. One thing that he said that I thought was disturbing, keep bashing us, but do not wonder why we go berserk. So this is also very common among transgender activists to say that, people like me, people like Charlie Kirk, you're the reason why we get violent. You're the reason why we have to murder. You're the reason why we go crazy. No, the reason why you go crazy is because you're a man who thinks that you're a woman, or you're a woman who thinks that you're a man. That is inherently insane. And insane people do other insane and very often violent things. Not all people who identify as trans are going to be violent, but I think they're much more likely to be violent because you're inherently mentally unstable. Now, this next story that we have to talk about has another component in it. And it actually is a common component with the first, but this is about a child, a minor in Canada, who identified as the opposite sex. And the impact of fatherlessness so clearly on this boy is obvious here. And so we've got a father who was stolen by transgender ideology. We have a father who is absent, which his absence helped induce transgender ideology, and this boy that we'll talk about next. And it goes to show so much, like how good God is in creating the two genders, creating mom and dad, creating male and female, and why we as Christians are called to say, God knows better. And therefore, we have to be clear about it if we want to save these people's lives. Let me pause and tell you about the next sponsor for the day, and that is We Heart Nutrition. I love We Heart Nutrition. I take their supplements every day. Kristen and Jacob are the real deal. They are a Christian mom and dad of 5 kids, and they are just trying to glorify God in everything they do. They started the supplement company because they felt called to do so, but really they saw a need. They saw a need for supplements that come with the most bioavailable ingredients. We take a lot of different things to make ourselves feel better, but sometimes we don't really know if it's making a difference. We look at the ingredients and we realize, okay, this is not the form of, for example, folic acid that I need. I actually need folate so that my body can digest it and can use it in the way that it needs. And that's why they care so much about every ingredient. They care about the packaging. They care about the message and the values behind each product. I use their probiotics, their iron, their prenatals, their omega-3s, their magnesium, all of it. It's been a game changer for my hair, skin, and nails, also for my health, my immune system. So thankful for We Heart Nutrition. You will love it. Go to weheartnutrition.com. Use code Allie. You'll get 20% off your order when you do that. weheartnutrition.com, code Allie. So just 6 days before the Rhode Island shooting that we were just discussing, there was another trans-involved shooting in Canada. So this so-called transgender, again, I say so-called because there's no such thing as transgender, gunman in a dress, a boy dressed as a girl. He reportedly killed his mother, an 11-year-old stepbrother, at home in Tumbler Ridge. Again, there's always this like envy and anger towards wives, towards mothers, towards sisters before heading to Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. And there he allegedly injured 25 people, killed 6 more, 5 students aged 12 to 13, 1 teacher. Then he also died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I know that there's one young woman, one girl, I don't remember her name, but she is in the hospital still in critical condition, fighting for her life after she was shot by this person. Now, here is how it was reported by ABC News, and this is so important to show that even in something like this, we are still pushing this madness, which just continues the vicious cycle. ABC News says, breaking, the person who carried out a school massacre is an 18-year-old woman with mental health issues, but she did not give a motive for one of the worst mass shootings in Canada's history. Okay, but it's not a woman. It is a boy who we know from his history has posted on social media about being a girl, not being accepted because he was a girl. Some also very disturbing, like maniacal laughing videos. So something very deeply spiritual going on here. And I know I said something earlier about this being insanity. And that is true. But sometimes mental health issues or insanity can kind of be used as an excuse. And I just want to make really clear that insanity is not an excuse for evil. That yes, you probably have a level of mental instability going on here in a lot of these mass shootings, but evil is the driver behind it. These people probably weren't born with mental health issues. They might not even have like a real diagnosis. It's probably blossomed into something like schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, bipolar disorder, but it started probably with evil. Like it started with an addiction. It started with looking at things they shouldn't have looked at. It started with thinking thoughts that they shouldn't have been thinking, and that festers. Satan gets a foothold. All of us could be vulnerable to that, by the way, because we're all fallen people, and it grows and it grows. And evil is a destabilizing force. But it shouldn't be an excuse, I don't think, in a court of law, and it certainly shouldn't be an excuse as we're thinking about right and wrong. So the biological father, this is a point that I think we need to note. The biological father of this Canadian shooter, his name is Justin Van Rootseller. He publicly released a statement to express his deep sorrow and to clarify his complete estrangement from the child. So the New York Post says transgender Canadian school shooter, we're trying not to say the shooter's name, the father distances himself from killer son. I was not a part of his life. In the statement, he emphasized that he had no involvement in his kid's life or the upbringing. Apparently, he says the mother had refused his participation from the start. We don't know. We don't know if that's true. It was really the mother's fault or not. Unfortunately, the mother is now dead. This father referred to his child using the surname Strang. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. From the mother's side, consistently used pronouns aligning with his son's biological sex throughout his comments. And the dad, Justin, stressed that his son never adopted or used his own family name. Anyway, what he's trying to do is to distance himself from his son. What he's trying to say is, this is not my fault. I was not involved in this at all. And I understand his desire to do that, but actually it was his absence, I believe, that contributed to this. It was his absence that created probably this kind of instability. Like, kids need more involvement from both parents, not less. He clearly didn't have this strong male role model that he needed in his life. And I'm not saying that is always the antidote. That's not always the thing that is going to prevent a young man, from going down this path. But it certainly doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help when you don't have a father in the home. There are a few things that we know about fatherlessness. An analysis of 56 school shootings by Dr. Peter Langman, psychologist and leading researcher on the psychology of school shooters, found that only 18% of the shooters were raised in a stable home with both biological parents, while 82% grew up in unstable family environments or without both biological parents together. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 80% of single-family parents in the United States are headed by mothers, meaning the biological father is not present in the household. Children in single-parent homes are at higher risk for low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, increased suicidal thoughts and attempts. 63% of youth suicides occur among individuals from fatherless homes. 85% of children who display behavioral disorders come from homes without a father. 66% of 75 juvenile delinquents that were studied in a study had experienced fatherlessness. 20% had never lived with their biological father. 25% had a father who is an alcoholic. There is so much research on this from so many different perspectives, not just Christian perspectives. Children need psychologically, physiologically, you need both your mom and your dad. The ideal situation for every child is a married biological mom and dad. That is the ideal. We live in a fallen world, so sometimes things are sub-ideal, and that's not great. The next best is for them to live with a married mom and dad who maybe are adoptive and aren't actually their biological parents, but that's the next best option. The most dangerous person in a child's life is actually the unrelated male who lives with them in the home. That's just statistically true. It's not true in every case. Fatherlessness and motherlessness have a severe effect on parents. I'm not just talking about this in relation to divorce, by the way, and deadbeat dads. I am talking about this also in relation to the redefinition of marriage as two men or two women. We are forcing fatherlessness and motherlessness and confusion on kids and saying, figure it out. And that is like the common theme in both of these. Yes, we've got two dads who made mistakes that could have at least contributed to the loss of life here. This dad in this case in Canada, I don't know all of the details. Maybe he really did try to be involved in his child's life. So I'm not putting the responsibility for these murders, on his shoulders. I don't know everything that happened. It's just the reality that his absence and fatherlessness in this son's life led to a lack of stability that probably led to what happened. And the derelict dad in the first story that we talked about, like his lack of personal responsibility certainly led to the choices that he made, which contributed to this tragic loss of life. And in both cases, what we see is this principle that we have watched over and over again, that we've talked about so much, is that children are always the primary unconsenting subjects of progressive social experiments over and over again, because children can't really consent. They don't have physical power to fight back. They don't have political capital that can be leveraged. They don't have any money capital that they can pay their way out of these situations. They don't even have the mental capacity to be able to defend themselves. They don't even have the legal rights as young children to say, I don't like this. This is a bad situation for me. They don't have the tools necessary to be able to fight back against really confusing ideology, to fight back against some of the things that they see online, the messages that are told to them in public schools, in some of these games and apps and pornography and all of this that is affecting them. Kids need their parents. They need moms and dads. Like we are the safeguard for them. And gosh, God was so good when he made the family. He made the family specifically for the tethering of the man, the protection of the woman, and the tethering of the woman in some ways, and the protection of the child. When we go outside of that in the name of love is love, in the name of just being authentic and doing what you want to do, kids suffer. Kids suffer. Katie Faust has been talking about this for a long time. I really appreciate her. Also recommend you read Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey. Just gives you a very solid theological and philosophical grounding for the definition of marriage, how we should treat our bodies when it comes to sex, and then also like why the reality of male and female are so important. But this is Satan's playground. He is loving this. He is an agent of chaos. He has been a murderer since the beginning. And so what is Christians' role in all of this? It's certainly not to just make the peace with it. It's certainly not to just like give nuance to the situation. Well, maybe it's okay if someone identifies as this. Maybe you should just use the, preferred pronouns in some case. Like maybe if we're just nice to them, they'll stop shooting people. That's not going to happen. Okay? Like you're not going to Neville Chamberlain yourself out of this one. We're not going to be able to compromise out of this one. The way out of this is clarity and courage. Not hatred, not cruelty. You love these people. You share the gospel with them, but it is never loving to lie to someone and to say, actually, yeah, God was wrong when he created you. Speak the truth in love to your friends who buy into this, your friends who have their pronoun in their profile. Talk with them about it. You don't have to be obnoxious. You can be persuasive. You can ask them questions. I really encourage you. I've already encouraged you to read someone else's book, but I do encourage you to read Toxic Empathy. And if you just read the gender chapter, you are going to know so much about where this philosophy comes from, how it started, the people who have pushed it, the money that is behind it, the science behind gender, and of course, what the Bible says about this that is so incredibly clear. We talked about last week that alliteration, the 5 R's that we talk about when it comes to the definition of marriage, but it's also true of the definition of gender. The definition of gender is between male and females, rooted in creation, reiterated throughout scripture, repeated by Jesus in Matthew 19:4-5, representative of Christ in the church when it comes to marriage in Ephesians 5, and then is also, in a way, reflective of the gospel when man and woman are joined in marriage. And so this is a central Christian tenet. It is not possible to be pro-transgender and to be a Christian. It is not possible. So love your neighbor enough to tell the truth. Love your neighbor enough to try to preserve their life, to try to protect them from the dangers of this ideology. Unfortunately, this is a pattern that we see over and over again. Charlie Kirk was allegedly shot by someone who had a so-called transgender partner, was angry about the truth that he spoke about male and female, which is biblical truth, which is why he was a martyr. The Annunciation Catholic school shooting in Minneapolis was also committed by someone who called himself transgender. Perry High School shooting in Iowa, January 2024, 2 killed. Shooter identified as transgender. Covenant Christian school shooting in Nashville. Everyone should go back and watch my episode on that from a couple years ago, March 2023. I could barely hold it together, but just understand what this ideology is doing. This was a woman who identified as a man. Even the Club Q gay bar shooting in Colorado Springs from November 2022. Someone who identified as non-binary. This ideology is killing people. It's killing the people who believe it, and it's killing other people too. Speak the truth and love. Christian lives literally depend on it. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Go to our next sponsor first, and that is Legacy Box. I'm so grateful for Legacy Box and the service that they offer. It's such an incredible idea because those of us who were born in the 90s, we've got a bunch of these home videos of us on VHS tapes, and we want to be able to pass them down, but we can't even watch them because none of us have a VHS player anymore. And even if they got transferred to DVD several years ago, well, now we don't have DVD players, and our computers don't even give us the option of putting in discs. And so you really just need it in a digital file. And that's exactly what Legacy Box does. They send you this box and you put in your VHS tapes and you can put in your pictures, and all of these memories can be digitized and put into a file that is well organized, sent back to you. They send you back all the hard copies too, of course. And now you have a version of all of these incredible memories over the decades that you can pass down to your kids and your grandkids. They won't get lost if your house gets flooded. Hopefully that doesn't happen, or something gets damaged in a move. You don't have to worry about losing these memories. You'll have them forever this way. So go to legacybox.com/Allie. You'll get 50% off with my link. That's legacybox.com/Allie. Let's do an update quickly on the Epstein files. And I know that we're like moving from dark to dark here, but it's so important for us to realize what's going on. And look, I think it's really overwhelming for all of you and also all of us in the commentary space to know what to talk about and when, and to know exactly what has been verified, what has not been verified. But the truth is that those in the Epstein files, especially those who have been documented as saying nasty stuff about children. I mean, some of the images, I'm trying not to look at the images and to read the descriptions of some of the things that have been happening over the years to babies, to children. And some of it, again, I'm not even sure is real. If it's just some exaggerated allegation, but some of this stuff is real. And I don't even want to repeat it to you because of how difficult it is to stomach. But some of the darkest and most demonic stuff was happening with impunity. Probably still happens. It does still happen in other realms of the world today. And anyone who is found to have been talking about committing those acts, who did commit those acts, who is involved with Jeffrey Epstein in any way, they need to be brought to justice. Our DOJ has a responsibility to do that, but other world governments do as well. And so in a stunning turn of events, which you've probably heard about by now, last Thursday, Prince Andrew was arrested at his home in the UK for suspicion of misconduct while in office. Police stated they were investigating allegations that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked Virginia Giuffre to Britain for Andrew at the age of 17. There are several other people around the world who are now being called out and are stepping down because of their alleged involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. So I'm not going to be able to pronounce all of these names. I don't have any phonetic spelling on my document. Thorbjørn Jagland, former Prime Minister of Norway and former Secretary General of the Council of Europe. He was charged in February 2026 with gross corruption, including allegedly accepting gifts and travel to Epstein's properties. Larry Summers, former U.S. Treasury Secretary under Obama and former Harvard president, he resigned from the board of OpenAI recently. And several other public roles. And in November 2025, after emails revealed him seeking romantic advice from Epstein. Kimball Musk, Elon Musk's younger brother, board member of the Burning Man Project, resigned in February 2026 following emails showing Epstein helped arrange a personal relationship for him in 2012 and 2013. Peter Mandelson, UK's ambassador to the US, dismissed in September 2025 after sending supportive messages to Epstein following his conviction and maintaining contact. We've got Steve Tisch, co-owner of the New York Giants, prompted an NFL review after emails from 2013 released in the Epstein files showed exchanges with Epstein discussing connections to women. And then lastly, we have Kathy Rumler. I think that's how you pronounce her last name, chief legal officer of Goldman Sachs and former White House counsel under President Barack Obama, a confidant of President Barack Obama. She was very tight, it seems like, in these emails that were revealed with Epstein signing off with XOXO, planning island visits. She submitted her resignation in February 2026, effective 4 months. 4 months from now, after scrutiny on her interactions with Epstein. It's clear that these people, at the very least, knew Epstein was a sketchy guy who bribed people and who could make all of your hedonistic dreams come true. And they continued to associate with him. Now, I believe some of these people probably did do criminal activity with Jeffrey Epstein beyond what we can even imagine. And I just want to know, like, what has happened to these child victims? Like, where are they? And I just hope that we have more brave people willing to come forward and to say, this is who my abuser was. Of course, we know Bill Gates was reportedly friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Melissa Gates has now talked about that openly. And so a few years ago, I think a lot of people thought that this was a conspiracy theory, that this is just some like cuckoo thing that these random obscure people on the internet thought was happening. There's no way that it's happening. There's no way anyone's above the law. I think what we're realizing is that there is an echelon of people that we don't have any understanding of when it comes to their power and the level of their depravity. Remember, we read in scripture that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And you might think, well, no, it's not just money, it's lust, it's power. Yes, but if scripture is true, then it's actually the love of money, covetousness, greed, that is a root, at least, of all different kinds of evil. Not money itself, but the idolatry of having more and more power and more influence and more pleasure. And after reading all of this, it actually is, it's just the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death, they just seem sketchier and sketchier. That's all I'll say. So I'll continue paying attention to this. It's always a balance for me. Like, how much darkness do I show on this show? Do I talk about on this show, trying to protect the ears and the eyes of myself, but also of y'all, while not ignoring the darkness that's happening, praying for justice? And we should all be pushing for that. All right, let me end on a couple of things. One, disturbing, but then one really, really helpful. But first, let me tell you about our next sponsor, and that's 7 Weeks Coffee. In all of the darkness that's happening in the world, I'm just so thankful for fellow Christians and especially Christian companies that are ushering in light, using their talents, using their resources in a way that glorifies God and helps the most vulnerable. 7 Weeks Coffee not only makes you really great tasting coffee, it's super high quality, mold-free, pesticide-free, organic, all that good stuff. We love it in our home. But they also donate 10% of every sale to a pregnancy pregnancy center across the country. They've donated well over $1 million to these pregnancy centers. That translates into saving these baby lives, giving moms in crisis the resources they need to make that life-affirming choice. So you can allow your coffee to serve a higher purpose. I'm so thankful for 7 Weeks Coffee that they make an awesome product that is also saving lives. So go to 7weekscoffee.com, use code Allie. You'll get an extra 10% off on your first order when you use my code. That's 7weekscoffee.com, code Allie. Okay, I've been meaning to talk about this and we just haven't gotten a chance, but I want to talk about Frida Baby. Now, this story is extremely disappointing to me because I and every other mom I know has used the Frida Baby products, whether it's the snot sucker or the breastfeeding tools. They have really good, effective products that are, I thought, like at first, just looking at the font and the name and some of the cute depictions on there, just like well-marketed, well-packaged, young, hip-looking products. I mean, they've completely blown up in the past few years because they just have a really effective marketing strategy. I have never, ever noticed any kind of sexual innuendo on any of their packages until they started getting backlash and people started pointing out. I had no idea some of the stuff that they had been posting about, but people pointed out that this is actually the theme and basically all of their products, turning these baby items into some kind of sexual joke. So this is according to Newsweek. Frida, the parent company of Frida Baby and Frida Mom, because they've got baby products and mom products, is facing widespread backlash and calls for boycotts after old social media posts and product packaging featuring sexual innuendos went viral on social media last week. The controversy exploded over a now deleted post that promoted a rectal thermometer for babies, captioned, this is like really actually tough for me to read. This is the closest your husband's gonna get to a threesome. You just have to wonder, like, what is going through the mind of someone that is like creating the packaging and marketing for something that, detects a fever in your child and thinks threesome. It's just very strange. Then you also have this ear thermometer. It's like an ear, forehead, touchless thermometer. And it says, how about a quickie? Now, I guess I'm just not that observant. I probably wouldn't have noticed that. But that one, in light of all of the other ones, is obviously a sexual joke. Even it looks like humidifier, I get turned on easily, another sexual joke. This one is like a nasal aspirator and it says, I'm a power sucker. I guess that's a sexual reference. And then one that I found really disturbing, and we cover up the faces of children because I don't think children should be made content. You've got this Frida Baby Instagram post and it's referencing their snot sucker, which if you're not a parent, like that alone is going to like really gross you out. But I won't even explain how it works. It's just pulling the snot out of the child's nose. And I guess this child has some like mucus on their face, and Frida Baby's caption is, what happens when you pull out too early. Okay. Really inappropriate. And people kind of dug up like who their marketing team was and this is on their website, like put the names and the faces of these people who are in charge of packaging, who are in charge of marketing, who are in charge of social media. And then Frida Baby ended up taking that page down. So obviously they realized there's some controversy there. It's not just men, it's men and women on this team, but it did seem like it was a male team that was in charge of marketing, which I just think is odd. Like, this is obviously a female brand. I'm not saying that you can't hire men at all, but why would men know like what attracts a woman to a particular product? I just find that a little bit weird. And so this is unraveling for them right now. They have responded and they basically just said, you know what, like what's funny to one person is not funny to another person, but they certainly didn't apologize. Now, this is their entire strategy. So how they're going to pivot, I'm not exactly sure. I just don't understand when it became acceptable to use kids as fodder for sexual jokes, like publicly, commercially. to make money off of something like that. Once again, kids who can't speak up for themselves, and they're just perverts out there who love this kind of stuff, and it just ends up like infesting people's brains, and it changes how we talk about children and how we think about this stuff. And I really just think it's glossing over one of the biggest evils in the world, which is the sexualization, objectification of children. And by the way, Christians for 2,000 years have been the ones to stand up against that rather. And from the early Roman Empire to today, to say, yeah, the child sacrifice and the child sexualization is going to end now. And so we still have a responsibility to do that. And some perspectives or some passages come to mind. Proverbs 26:18-19, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I am only joking. Interesting. Luke 17:2, it would be better for him, this is Jesus, if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were cast into the sea, than that he should cause one of these little ones to sin. Ephesians 5:3-4, but sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not even be named among you as is proper among the saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. So we really shouldn't have any level of tolerance of this kind of stuff, which is really a bummer because some of their products are super effective and it just wasn't necessary. I think they could have been very successful without this, and unfortunately, they've normalized something really wicked. All right, let's end on something that is encouraging. Let's end on Ben Sasse, who has been diagnosed with cancer and a stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He described it as a death sentence. And so apparently it is definitely fatal. But he is now going on several podcasts and he is just talking about his faith and talking about how he is facing death with courage. And I just want to play you a clip. It's a little over a minute and respond to it in just a second. Let me tell you about our last sponsor for the day first. As America turns 250, we want to help Good Ranchers take a moment to remember the people who helped build it. Not the ones in history books necessarily, but the ones who woke up before the sun season after season without seeking any sort of applause. Those are America's ranchers and their farmers who don't get the gratitude they need, but the way that we can support them, especially this year as we're celebrating America's big birthday, is to buy all of our meat from American farms and ranches rather than rewarding the foreign meat makers that are sending the cheap meat over here, probably aren't feeding their cows well. Like, we want to make sure that we are honoring all of the hard work of these family farms. That's why we get our meat from Good Ranchers. Plus, it just makes your life easier. It shows up in a box on dry ice on your front door every month. You don't have to worry about picking meat out at the grocery store. They've got all different kinds of meat: seafood, chicken, beef. They've got steak. They've got chicken nuggets. They've got bacon, and it's all so good. I can tell you personally that I love Good Ranchers meat. Go to goodranchers.com, use code Allie. You'll get an extra $25 off your first order. Goodranchers.com, code Allie. So Ben Sasse is a former senator for Nebraska, and he recently shared this really what I thought was maybe the most profound, succinct presentation of the gospel. On Wednesday, February 18th, he was on an episode of the Sola Media podcast, and here's how he described just this incredible mystery and seeming paradox of being this sinner, rebel, image bearer of God, saved by Christ. Here's that too.
It's fun to talk to your kids and your nephews and nieces about how Jesus did everything on the cross to fulfill the whole law. I fulfilled none of it. He fulfilled all of it, and he took away all of my sins. And I'm not just justified, I'm actually being made intrinsically righteous, though you can't see it, like so little fruit and buds, but it will be accomplished. And so the gospel is all of those Ordo Salutis stuff, and we get to talk about what Jesus did for us positively and took away negatively, and what we were saved on a cross tree outside Jerusalem, and we are being saved, and we will be saved completely. But Genesis 3 and Romans 5, like, I am in Adam a member of this rebellious race. Imago Dei, we were created glorious in God's image and meant for fellowship with him, and yet we're a part of this rebel clan of everybody. And that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is the new Adam came from heaven, laid down all of his prerogatives, and came and swept us up.
Oh, it's really hard to get through that, especially at the very end, when he starts to tear up. And I just love seeing a grown man broken by the beauty of the gospel. Like, that is a man who has studied his Bible. That is a man who knows his theology. That is a man who is facing death with courage because he knows Jesus, not because he is counting on his own righteousness, not because he's counting his list of good deeds, not because he's looking at his record of public service, not because he's like, wow, I accomplished a lot in life. Look at me, I was a senator, but because he knows his Savior. And that is the only place really that any of us can have confidence. And he is showing the world how to die well, and that takes a lot of bravery. 2 Corinthians 4:16-18, so we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. Romans 5:3-5. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So that's the hope that we have. We've got a lot of craziness, a lot of darkness going on in the world, but death, especially imminent death, like the one Ben Sasse is facing, has a way of narrowing your perspective and bringing to light the things that are most important. And all of this that we talked about today is important, but I want us to remember that the most important thing that we can do is share the gospel with those we know and love, and disciple our kids in what is good, right, and true. I just want you to know, like, that is also a way to fight the culture war. It doesn't necessarily mean running for office. It might mean starting a podcast, but it might just mean doing your job as a mom, as a neighbor, as a citizen with total clarity and courage and boldness. Like, God uses the unseen and unsung work of believers throughout history to accomplish incredible feats. And I trust that that's what God is going to do through all of our lives. And I hope to be an encouragement in that for you. All right, that's all we've got time for today. We will be back here on Wednesday.